when you feel like you cannot control things that you're eating and your brain just shuts off and you go for the thing, that's kind of dark.
Ruslan.
Vlad said, thoughts about Christians struggling with an eating disorder. I think Christians can struggle with anything. I think eating disorders are like many issues that folks have dealt with. I don't know if I would classify my food addiction as an eating disorder. I mean, I guess it kind of is. Like I definitely have gone through phases where I feel like when you feel like you're out of control, like you cannot control what goes into your mouth or what you're eating or what you're watching or whatever, like when something overtakes you, it's an addiction. It's a form of an addiction. And I've done all the above. I haven't done binge eating or stress eating, but definitely in a sense of like being overwhelmed and not being able to control my urges. And for me, it was always connected to sugar, meaning I'm craving starchy, sugary foods, which is why I'm like adamant about staying away from sugar now. Emotional eating too. Future emotional eating is one of those like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having cake at a birthday party, right? Or like being excited and because you're with family and having cake. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think when you feel like you cannot control things that you're eating and your brain just shuts off and you go for the thing, that's kind of dark, right? And I would put it up there with an addiction. And that's why, like, in my situation, I had to get with Coach JT and get to the addiction side. And this is what I mean. And that's to bring it back to the corn conversation. By corn, I'm talking about adult content. Sometimes men have an issue and have a corn addiction. Sometimes. Meaning that it's rooted in something super duper duper deep, and it's maybe a result of trauma, and it's mainly a result of something else going on, and you can't even pinpoint why you do this. It just overtakes you. That is a reality that I've endured because of growing up and experiencing SA as a kid. But then I do feel like there's certain things where it's not as a result of some deep-rooted trauma that you need to dig up the root of and get to the issue. And, sometimes it's just dudes like to look at attractive bodies. And I would parallel food in the same way. There are definitely times where maybe I was struggling with addiction because I needed to cope. I needed to feel better. I needed a dopamine spike, and it was covering up something deeper. But then there's also the reality of like, we just have access to so much savory and sugary food combined together, and that your body is naturally going to gravitate towards foods that are both savory and have sugar in them, right? So like this is why like the whole Chick-fil-A chicken thing, like fried chicken that is savory but also has sugar in the batter is mad dangerous because our brains don't know, we don't get that sort of food, so our brains overload on it, and it's not super deep. It's just your brain is like overwhelmed with the dopamine release of something that you don't really have very often, or we didn't historically. And so when you're having certain things that are just, oh my gosh, like this is like chips, like the texture, they're savory, there's saltiness to them, and they are also, they're starchy, so they're spiking your blood sugar, right? You guys tracking? So of course you're gonna like that. We've never had these sorts of things before. And I say that to say that like binging on chips is not necessarily a super deep thing. You're just over consuming because your brain is just like, oh, this is dopamine overload. Oh my gosh, this is great. Hey, you want to see something crazy? 67% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed. Do me a quick favor, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date on all the videos here on the Blessed God Studios channel. And sometimes men with women are the same way. I don't think we've had as much access to attractive women's bodies than we do today. And so so if a guy's taking a second, third look glance, it's not always super deep. It's just there's attractive women. Historically, we have never went through seasons of time like we do in this era where there's always attractive women. So your body is just naturally like, oh my gosh, attractive women. And it's not always super duper deep. It's not always super duper deep where it's like rooted in some things. And so as someone that's dealt with the root of my issues, both with food and corn, and as someone that is experiencing victory in these issues, I know that not everything that is an addiction is actually rooted in something deep that you need to get to the bottom of it. Sometimes you are just getting a dopamine spike because you're freaking bored. That's very different than when you are trying to cover something up because you don't want to deal with it and do the work and go to therapy. Okay? So in that, food is hard because you can't just not eat food. I mean, you can fast, but you can't just avoid eating food. And so to find that balance of eating the right foods at the right times so that you're off the stuff that spikes your blood sugar, that pushes the cravings, is in the same way that I think people are navigating sensuality and sexuality in this climate. It's just difficult. And so sometimes guys are looking at stuff because there's some real issues there and they're really dealing with something. You got to get to the root of it. Maybe it's SA, maybe, right? Other times, dudes just like looking at pretty girls. It's not super deep. That doesn't make it right, by the way. But you sometimes just need to adjust the behavior and practice the law of replacement, and don't need to go in and like unpack it in a therapy session all the time. With food addiction, I think one, you got to figure out, what is it? Are you bulimic? Are you eating to cope, or are you just eating foods that we just have never had access to except within the last 20, 30 years, and our bodies don't know how to moderate such sweet and savory foods, and so you're just binging Chipotle chips because they got this little lime flavor to them, and they're savory, and they're spiking your blood sugar, so there's a sugar component to them. Is it just that superficial, or are you really out here struggling with food addiction and may need to sit and get some help? I think you got to get to that. I think you got to get to the root of that. That doesn't, by the way, the result ends up the same. You go down a dark path either way, but I think it's important to know the difference, and I think you can implement tactics to avoid those sorts of things, right? Like there used to be a time where I couldn't go to Chipotle and not get the chips and guac. Now I've been to Chipotle, I don't know, multiple times in the last 2 weeks, and I don't get the chips. I'm good. I'm chilling. I'm straight. You see what I mean? So I think you got to figure out, and is this something that's superficial, or is this something that you are actually addicted to? And if you're addicted to, well, then you're gonna have to seek help and treatment for it. You're gonna have to seek help and treatment for it. Like if it's a bona fide addiction, your brain shuts down, you're just eating stuff, you're going to have to get treatment for it. And you're gonna have to figure out what the heck is going on, and why are you coping? What are you trying to avoid? Those sorts of things, right? So hopefully this is making sense, because by the way, I'm not trying to make light of any of the above. Eating the wrong foods at the wrong times can kill you. Lust can kill you, like in a very literal sense. Like you out here dealing with certain temptations, and then you can go down the dark hole of hooking up and catch an STI and die. Like that is a real thing. Either can kill you, but you also got to know why you're misbehaving. Hey, this clip is from our daily after party stream. If you enjoyed it, consider signing up for our Patreon community for only $5 a month, where you get access to the replays of our daily after party streams, as well as the uncut extended versions of our podcast, Discord access that's private, and a discount code for our merch store, only $5 a month. And ultimately, it's the best way to help us contextualize the gospel of Jesus using media, podcasting, and of course, YouTube. The link for that is in the description or in the pinned comment. The perks are amazing. You should get on there. It's only $5 a month. I'll see you over there, all right? Peace.